Oh, great. And my speaker's not coming out the correct speaker. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, excellent. Well, I'll go
Yes.
ahead and get started. My name is Danae Barkey. I am the Executive Director of HCU Network America. I think most everyone in attendance knows who I am probably at this point. Um, and so I just want to thank you for joining us this Sunday afternoon, evening, depending on where you are at. Um, the first 10, 15 minutes, I'm just going to kind of recap where we've been as an organization since the beginning of this year, kind of share updates on what we've been doing with our priorities, share what those priorities are, and then kind of what's happening in the next couple of months here through June. So to get started, back in January, we had our HCU community town hall meeting, and this laid out some restructuring plans for our committees. Previously, we had a classical steering committee, covalent steering committee, and a severe MTHFR, but there was so much overlap that was happening between them that we had decided to go ahead and restructure. And what came with that restructuring is now we, instead of each committee doing all these things, now there's a committee specifically for community engagement, a committee for research, a committee for advocacy awareness, and a committee for fundraising. This just makes it a little bit easier to really focus and hone in on the specific skills and interests that we as individuals have. We have not actually kicked off these committees yet. You will see here quickly that we've had a ton going on. I have not been at my house more than 2 weeks at a time because of different travels. And so we do hope to be launching those committees shortly soon. And so with that, I have a little bit of a research update. These are the wonderful faces that help steer the direction of our research. We also have a scientific advisory board. Those are the people that select our grants. But these are all the people, Peter, Kim, and Harvey. They're kind of front and center. They attend our board meetings and they really hone in onto how the priorities we choose in terms of research, how we approach clinic stuff, and so forth. And then we have all these wonderful medical advisors. Peter, Kim, and Harvey are also medical advisors in addition to their role. And what they do is they help review materials, they help suggest priorities, they help us identify gaps in our materials and in our resources, and so forth. Um, and so that's a little bit about them. But this past February, Brittany, who is the chair of our research committee, and she's also the chair of the scientific advisory board for the remethylation disorders, we met with all of these wonderful people as a group and discussed some of the issues that we saw. The big, sorry, there's people joining and making sure I'm not losing anyone. But we have identified a lot of gaps within things that we're seeing within the community that really concerned us. One of the big concerns for the cobalamin community is this national shortage of hydroxycobalamin. And then anytime when we approach industry, there's always the conversation of, oh, there's not enough literature. So we are working to address that. They are actually all collaborating on one paper because they all just happen to be NORD centers of excellence. And so they all can collaborate under one house and they will be publishing a paper. If your clinic has a lot of cobalamin patients, I would highly suggest that they publish because we cannot accelerate without understanding what current things look like for patients in terms of dosing, in terms of outcomes. The more data we have, the better off we have. One of the other things that's been happening more frequently in our community is we also have an unprecedented number of women who are becoming pregnant with homocystinuria. I was that patient 5 years ago, and there was really no literature to guide us. And with more and more people choosing to have families, which they rightfully can do so, we have really realized there are some major gaps, though, in the guidance around this. And so that's one of the other projects that we're hoping to undertake here. It's a little bit harder just because it's a much smaller cohort. It's females, they have to be of child rearing age, they have to want to start a family. So there's a lot more that goes into those kind of things. That will eventually become part of the guidelines for diagnosis and management, though. And so we are really excited that I know I'm personally excited because I felt a little bit like a guinea pig throughout my own pregnancy process. So we have some wonderful things. There's some larger things that are happening too that we'll eventually be able to share with the community. But these are just some of the wonderful faces, and those are just a couple of the priorities that you'll see us getting more involved with as the year progresses. Then the first, so after research, we have advocacy and awareness. February was a very busy month. We did a lot of stuff the end of the month on social media, but as you can see here, we have been quite a few places. Liz, who's on the call, she went with a group of patients and a couple of parents to DC to Hill Week and or Rare Disease Week, and they participated in helping advocate and share their stories for different things. Two of the bills that we highly support that need a lot of encouragement in our Congress is the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, but also the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act. I think we can all recognize the inequities that exist in newborn screening, but also in terms of medical nutrition. That's low protein formula, that's low protein foods, that's access to hydroxycobalamin. So there's a lot of different things that bill actually covers for our community. If you're interested in getting more engaged, you can reach out to myself or Liz, and we're happy to talk to you about other opportunities as well, because there will be some more things forthcoming. Also, later this year, we're hoping to be able to announce at our conference. And, oh, hold on one second. I might have inadvertently, nope, that was the next slide. Okay, so other thing that we have gotten back to is we have partnered with Ben Massengale from the HCU podcast, and he has been diligently putting out episodes of the podcast. Right now, we're focusing on advocacy and how it relates to our data collection program, but we are eventually going to be pivoting into patient stories around the key domains, domains being the heart, eyesight, and so forth. We did those previously as like Facebook Live events, but now we're taking them into a podcast format, and this has been successful. To date, we've talked about the data collection, and Brittany was on that. She is a mother with a son with cobalamin G, and she talked about advocacy for hydroxycobalamin, and that went hand in hand with our medications and supplement usage survey. There's a little graphic here that summarizes the data that is in the guidelines around what treatments have been found beneficial, what's been found limited, and what's to be avoided. Liz, who's also been on the podcast, is on the call, and she talked about newborn screening, and we were able to kind of take and put this into a little graphic that talks about what we have as newborn screening, but what also are some of the issues. And she did a wonderful job on the podcast, and that ties into the diagnosis survey, which is in RareX as well. And then in a couple of days here, we're actually going to be putting out our March episode, which spotlights medical nutrition and the importance to that. And we have a little bit of data that we were able to pull. This is very specific really to, because cobalamin patients and MTHFR patients are, the guidelines do not support low protein diets for the men anymore. And it actually is to be avoided. So classical homocystinuria is really the only one who has a medical diet. 34 patients responded to this survey, and 79% reported requiring a low protein diet. And that is also because half of the classical homocystinuria patient does respond to B6. So we suspect that the other 20%, sorry, my computer's doing odd things. 20% are B6 responsive, so they would not need a low protein diet. And then, or they've classified themselves as classical homocystinuria and they don't need it when really they're a different type of homocystinuria. That's a possibility too. Okay, I think you guys can still see a screen. Does it have the tiles up? Okay, it's like flashing on my end. I'm like, what are you guys actually seeing? So, and then we had a little report here that only 29% of those who had been prescribed a low protein diet were actually taking medical formula. And we will be discussing this more with our medical advisors because typically when you are put on a low protein diet to not become nutritionally deficit, you do need medical formula. So we are looking further into this data because it was quite alarming to us. And then we did take some of the medication survey data. 73% of classical homocystinuria patients were on betaine, about half were on folic acid or folate, and then a little bit less than half were on B6, and about a third also take B12. So we are starting to put out data from the data collection program, which you'll see more of as time continues on, and Dr. Chapman will be presenting a much more complete data set at our conference. And then in terms of advocacy and research and awareness, this kind of all comes ahead when we're at conferences. So earlier this month, Liz and I, we attended ACMG in Toronto, Canada. Pictured here is Curtis McLaughlin. He is one of our medical advisors, and Kim Chapman. And it was a wonderful opportunity to network and kind of share what our organization does with other geneticists, genetic counselors, and anyone else in the genetics world. HCU Network America, myself, and Dr. Chapman, we collaborated on a poster that was presented at ACMG. This is the overall poster, and I will break it down here just so you guys aren't trying to read that tiny little square on your screens. But it essentially, this is the summary of findings, and it just says that, you know, homocystinuria is caused by classical homocystinuria. And then it further breaks down into remethylation disorders, which is cobalamin, and severe MTHFR, and that we have this data collection program with powered by RareX. This summarizes making sure I'm not jumping ahead of myself here. The time in which patients were diagnosed. You can see here that a lot of patients are diagnosed for newborn screening, but then if they are not, it kind of is a hit or miss about when they will be diagnosed. So if you are in the data collection, if you have created an account, you might be able to kind of identify yourself within this data, which I think is pretty cool. And so right now we're enrolling about 4.5 patients per month. We are just shy of 100 participants. So if you have not enrolled, please do so and take the head to toe survey, because the head to toe survey brings us this data. So this is an overview of all the different domains, and it does go into much more detail than this. But the highest percentage, and this is all classical remethylation, so cobalamin, MTHFR, so all 96 participants, but not everyone in the data collection program has completed the head to toe survey. So at the time of this data pull, only 62 patients had completed the head to toe survey. And of those 62, 65% reported eye and vision findings, which I don't think would surprise most of us in our community. And then 58% reported brain and nervous system abnormalities, followed by 50% of digestive complaints and 46% of connective tissue complications. Other issues that should be highlighted here are the behavior and psychiatric, teeth and mouth, sleep difficulties, growth occurrences, and skin problems. The things that probably surprised our medical advisors the most when they reviewed this data was the behavior in psychiatric, as well as the teeth and mouth portion, because that hadn't really been seen, same as the digestive complaints. So we are really excited to see some things that we haven't seen really reflected in the literature. Not to say that's a good thing, but we're now finally capturing things that we weren't aware of before. And if some of you remember, this past winter, Dr. Chapman did publish a paper on some of the early dental findings of the data collection program. This is probably one of the most overwhelming portions of this, but I'll sum this up in the easiest to weigh things. So this is a quality of life assessment, and there were 20 responses from 24 individuals. And it's actually really good because what this concludes is that patients overall felt they were accepted by their peers. And I will get into some further conclusions here on the next one. Newborn screening does not and has not identified all patients with homocystinuria. A high index of suspicion is necessary, which I think anyone who's really been engaged with our community has known that there is this giant shortcoming of newborn screening in our community. And it's even worse for the remethylation disorders, as not all states test for them. Digestive, which was 49%, and behavior and psychiatric complications, which was 47%, are higher than listed in previous reports. And children are generally accepted for their disorder and do well, but are still anxious and worried. And we do attribute that because there are some things that just happen also with carrying the weight of it, having a rare disease. But it's great to know that they are being accepted. And so this is really trying to this discussion is bringing more attention to those conclusions and what we can do as next steps. And so we've also had some community support and engagement activities. Liz, earlier this month, held a teen meetup. We had, I think, 3 or 4 teens. This is a great opportunity for them just to kind of come together in a more casual way outside of our conference and get to know each other. And so we're really excited to see this little group grow. And so if you have teens or know of other teens with one of the homocystinuria, please reach out to them. You can see they really do have a blast when they all get together in person. They're like a little family when they reconnect. And then one of the things that we launched late last winter was our request tickets. This is an example of a cobalamin kit that Liz just recently sent out. Here's our little HCU Harvey gorilla. And these are just some examples of different things that you can request. These can be tailored to your specific needs, what type of homocystinuria you have, where you or your child are at in your diagnosis, and just to help you on your journey. So there's lots of different things you can request, and that link can be found on our website. Trying to move fast here. Fundraising, we've had a lot of little fundraising activities, nothing massive. We had a good popcorn sale in January, followed by Panda Express fundraiser, and then one of our fundraising committee members, Tom, held a Football Squares fundraiser, and we have raised just under $2,000. All our proceeds are benefiting our community engagement, which includes our conference. And so these funds right now will be used to help with scholarships for the conference because we've had an unprecedented number of requests. And we're very excited. So we're just going to quickly go over what's next, and then I'm going to open it up. Community support and education. Liz and I will be attending another conference later this month in North Carolina. And there's quite a big cohort of patients there. So we'll be hosting an in-person little pizza party at a Blaze Pizza. And then once we get back, you can see the dates are very close here. We are having an Ask Me Anything with Flock around their new app that they'll be launching and their family camps. Flock is really designed for the classical HCU community, but there may be some things that would benefit the other side of homocystinuria too. But it's really an app to count protein. So that's the premise behind it. But you're happy to check that out and learn more about that as well. And then we do have another teen meetup in May, the day before World Homocystinuria Awareness Day. And we'll have that link soon. But the registration is open for the Ask Me Anything. And the pizza party is just to show up. And our last big event that will be happening before our next community meeting is our conference. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. I might be biased because I helped put together the agenda, but I'm really, really excited about our breakouts too. These are much more specialized breakout sessions than we've had in the past. So participants will really have an opportunity to find support in ways they have not before. And those will all take place in the afternoon of day one. So registration is free to attend the conference. All you have to do is get yourself there. And there are still scholarships for the hotel. They are limited though, so we may run out. We'll be announcing the deadline is March 31st, and then we'll be deciding by April 12th how we are dividing up those funds. Advocacy and awareness, as I mentioned, we have another podcast episode coming out with Jamila Gutierrez in about 4 days. And she'll talk about her journey in the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. We also have, when we're in North Carolina, I'll be presenting with a group of other nonprofits to really stress the importance of clinic and patient organizations collaboration. We put out a poll as a group, and there was, I think it was 302 respondents between all the different patient advocacy group patients, but only less than 55% of patients said they had never gotten a referral to a patient advocacy organization. And we know that when patients are connected, they tend to do better because they're having a different kind of support than the clinics can give. Clinics are very great, and we really want to help support them in their journey. So we'll be presenting that in April. And then in May, we have World Homocystinuria Awareness Day. And so we'll be putting together a panel. So some of you may be reached out to, but that's why these are empty. We have not reached out to participants, but we're really excited on our theme this year for World Homocystinuria Awareness Day. We're bringing back the Hope Connects Us, but help navigate the maze, because diagnosis is a maze to be navigated, and so is treatment. And I think many here will recognize those obstacles with their own journeys. So those details will be forthcoming. And then fundraising, we will be launching World Homocystinuria Awareness Day right now, but we are taking donations. There will be a raffle that is part of this, and the raffle winners will be also announced on May 18th as part of that panel. We just finalized the beginning of our graphics for our Race for Research this September, and we'll hopefully have those details by May as well. So mark your calendars. There's lots of things happening. And